been a prized dish for thousands of years, and in 19th century England, it had aged to its prime. Perhaps you have had the experience of making an acquaintance with a particularly memorable cheese. This is the story of a journey taken by these sophisticated delicacies, and those who accompany them. And now, Cheese as a Traveling Companion from Three Men in a Boat by Jerome K. Jerome. I remember a friend of mine buying a couple of cheeses at Liverpool. Splendid cheeses they were, ripe and mellow, and with a 200 horsepower scent about them that might have been warranted to carry 3 miles and knock a man over at 200 yards. I was in Liverpool at the time, and my friend said that if I didn't mind, he would get me to take them back with me to London, as he should not be coming up for a day or two himself, and he did not think that cheeses ought to be kept much longer. "Oh, with pleasure, dear boy," I replied. "With pleasure." I called for the cheeses and took them away in a cab. It was a ramshackle affair, dragged along by a knock-kneed, broken-winded somnambulist, which his owner, in a moment of enthusiasm during conversation, referred to as a horse. I put the cheeses on top, and we started off at a shamble that would have done credit to the swiftest steamroller ever built, and all went merry as a funeral bell until we turned the corner. There, the wind carried a whiff from the cheeses full onto our steed. It woke him up, and with a snort of terror, he dashed off at 3 miles an hour. The wind still blew in his direction, and before he reached the end of the street, he was laying himself out at the rate of nearly 4 miles an hour, leaving the saddle lady simply nowhere. It took 2 porters as well as the driver to hold him at the station, and I do not think they would have done it, even then, had not one of the men had the presence of mind to put a handkerchief over his nose and to light a bit of brown paper. I took my ticket and marched proudly up the platform with my cheeses, the people falling back respectfully on either side. The train was crowded, and I had to get into a carriage where there were already 7 other people. One crusty old gentleman objected, but I got in notwithstanding, and putting my cheeses upon the rack, squeezed down with a pleasant smile and said, "It was a warm day." A few moments passed, and then the old gentleman began to fidget. "Very close in here," he said. "Quite oppressive," said the man next to him. And they both began sniffing, and on the 3rd sniff, they caught it right on the chest and rose up without another word and went out. And then a stout lady got up and said it was disgraceful that a respectable married woman should be harried about in this way, and gathered up a bag and 8 parcels and went out. The remaining 4 passengers sat on for a while until a solemn-looking man in the corner, who from his dress and general appearance seemed to belong to the undertaker class, said it put him in mind of dead baby. And the other 3 passengers tried to get out of the door at the same time and hurt themselves. I smiled at the last gentleman. I said that we were going to have the carriage to ourselves, and he laughed pleasantly and said that some people made such a fuss over a little thing. But even he grew strangely depressed after we had started, and so when we reached Crewe, I asked him to come and have a drink. He accepted, and we forced our way into the buffet, where we yelled and stamped and waved our umbrellas for a quarter of an hour, and then a young lady came and asked us if we wanted anything. "What's yours?" I said, turning to my friend. "I'll have half a crown's worth of brandy, neat, if you please, miss," he responded. And he went off quietly after he had drunk it and got into another carriage, which I thought mean. From Crewe, I had the compartment to myself, though the train was crowded. As we drew up at the different stations, the people, seeing my empty carriage, would rush for it. "Here we are, Maria, come along, plenty of room." "All right, Tom, we'll get in here," they would shout. And they would run along, carrying heavy bags, and fight round the door to get in first. And one would open the door, and mount the steps, and stagger back into the arms of the man behind him. And they would all come and have a sniff, and then droop off and squeeze into other carriages, or pay the difference and go first. From Euston, I took the cheeses down to my friend's house. When his wife came into the room, she smelt round for an instant. Then she said, What is it? Tell me the worst. I said, it's cheeses. Tom bought them in Liverpool and asked me to bring them up with me. And I added that I hoped she understood it had nothing to do with me, and she said she was sure of that, but she would speak to Tom about it when he came home. My friend was detained in Liverpool longer than he expected, and 3 days later, as he still hadn't returned back, his wife called on me. She said, what did Tom say about those cheeses? I replied he had directed they were to be kept in a moist place and that nobody was to touch them. She said, nobody's likely to touch them. Had he smelt them? I thought he had, and added that he seemed greatly attached to them. You think he would be upset, she queried, if I gave a man a sovereign to take them away and bury them? I answered that I thought he would never smile again. An idea struck her. She said, do you mind keeping them for him? Let me send them round to you. Madam, I replied, for myself, I like the smell of cheese, and the journey the other day with them from Liverpool I shall ever look back upon as a happy ending to a pleasant holiday. But in this world we must consider others. The lady under whose roof I have the honor of residing as a widow, and possibly an orphan too. She has a strong, I may say an eloquent, objection to being what she terms put upon. The presence of your husband's cheeses in her house I instinctively feel she would regard as a put upon. And it shall never be said that I put upon the widow and the orphan. Very well then, said my friend's wife, rising. All I have to say is that I shall take the cheeses and go to a hotel until those cheeses are eaten. I decline to live any longer in the same house as them. The hotel bill came to 15 guineas, and my friend, after reckoning everything up, found that the cheeses had cost him 8 and 6 pence a pound. He said he dearly loved a bit of cheese, but it was beyond his means, so he determined to get rid of them. He threw them into the canal, but had to fish them out again as the bargemen complained. They said it made them feel quite faint. And then, after that, he took them one dark night and left them in the parish mortuary. But the coroner discovered them and made a fearful fuss. He said it was a plot to deprive him of his living by waking up the corpses. My friend got rid of them at last by taking them down to a seaside town and burying them on the beach. They gained the place quite a reputation. Visitors said they had never noticed before how strong the air was, and weak-chested and consumptive people used to throng there for years afterward.